It's Pastors Jen and Jacob, and we have another special guest for our digital devotion today. You know that our church supports over 20 different local and global mission organizations. That's such a part of the DNA and heart of what we do at Claremont United Church of Christ. And one of those programs is part of the National United Church of Christ Ministries, and it's a program called Global Ministries, and in particular, an intern program they have where students become interns and they go to different parts of the world to see what God is up to in places other than our own country. And so that is one program that we financially support as a church. And so we wanted to share with you a little bit about that program and hear from one of the interns herself. And so we have Abby Fate with us, who will be sharing and talking with us about her work. So welcome, Abby.
Welcome, Abby. Thanks for joining us. Well, tell us a little bit about how you got connected to Global Ministries and the work that you've done there.
Yeah, that's a great question. It definitely wasn't like a straight arrow. There's some people who knew their whole college career that they wanted to do Global Ministries, and I was definitely not one of those people. It's actually kind of funny. My parents were Global Mission interns.
Wow.
Long before I was born. I think they were from 92 to 94. So I always kind of knew it was a thing, but almost was more determined that I wasn't going to do it because they really wanted me to, and I was going to do my own thing, and that wasn't going to be a part of it. And then as I was getting into my senior year of college, I graduated in May of 2019. I was feeling like I wasn't really ready for grad school and wasn't exactly sure. I had a lot of ideas of things I was interested in and wanted to study, but didn't feel like that I was really going to be ready to be doing that right out of undergrad. And I started talking with Global Ministries. And again, I really kind of started talking with them because my parents wanted me to, and I was determined I was not going to do it. And then as soon as I started talking with them and they started telling me about the Global Mission Intern Program and about all of these really cool placements that were opportunities for me, I just got hooked in right away. And so it was for maybe about 4 months, 5 months or so, I was in conversations with them during my senior year, during that spring semester, about what my interests were and what part of the world I wanted to go to and what sort of language experience I had, and that they really worked with me to find a placement that fit all of these different pieces that I was looking for. And so that's how I ended up in southern Mexico, in a town called San Cristobal de las Casas.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. And what were you doing in the town?
So the way that the Global Mission Intern Program works is once you're in country, you're pretty much they take a sort of a more hands-off approach, which is something that I really appreciated, that they tell you really clearly, okay, when you're in country, your organization is your first line for any questions or anything like that. So of course I could go to Global Ministries with any issues that came up, but it was really, I was just there working with this organization. And it's an organization called Milel Shohoval, which is in the Mayan language Tzotzil, and it means a true light in Tzotzil. But it's an Indigenous children's rights organization. So what I was actually doing there, they do a lot of really amazing work at this organization, and I was in the child worker program, which essentially means we were doing workshops with children who work in or accompany their families working in different markets around the city. So it was a lot of games, it was a lot of playing with kids, and then it was also a lot of doing different sort of educational programming, talking about identity and talking about their rights as children and as Indigenous people. And yeah, that was sort of the gist of what I was doing there.
That's great.
Wow.
You know, in the history of the church, we've seen that there is a lot of quote unquote toxic charity and colonization as it relates to missionary work. And I know that the United Church of Christ has done a lot to get away from really complicated toxic models of mission work and to make sure that anyone who's going to another country understands the role of empowering that community and also learning from that community. So first, we can talk about both of those, but first, what are ways in which your work is empowering the communities that you're working with?
Yeah, I think a really important thing that Global Ministries does is that we're always working with and working for local organizations. So the organization I was at takes volunteers from all over the world, and there were volunteers from, it's more European there, just the culture of that city. There's a lot of young European people that are sort of doing their social service year there. But so this organization has German and French volunteers, and I was there as well. But everyone that is the leadership of that organization is from Mexico. A lot of them are Indigenous, a lot of them speak Indigenous languages, and they're definitely like directing and steering the ship. And we're kind of coming in and learning from them. And I had a lot of learning to do, and still have a lot of learning to do when I go back. But it was I think that Global Ministries doesn't really ever send you somewhere to go be in charge or go. You're not ever going to be in charge. You're working with and for local organizations and communities. And also, sort of to a point that you said earlier about the UCC, I do think that's something really important to point out. And I also come from a UCC church, and so when I think about like the culture of the UCC that I grew up in, it's not really surprising that they're really intentional about their mission work, but that was something that I was really hesitant about, was doing any sort of missionary thing. But I think even like the language that they use, like they don't use missionary language, they say mission coworker, because they really want to emphasize that we're working with. You're not like going in and spreading God to the people. That's not at all what we're trying to do. It's very much working with local communities and organizations.
That's amazing.
That's well said. Okay, tell us one of the most impactful experiences you've had in your work with Global Ministries.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many to pick from. I think, okay, I'm going to do two really short ones. One, okay. I think I'm so happy that I was, instead of just traveling, that I was like at an organization, because my coworkers really took me in and took me along to all sorts of things that I would have no idea about otherwise. And I think one of the things was, it was Dia de los Muertos in Mexico about a month after I got there, because it's right at the beginning of November, and I didn't really have that many friends yet besides my coworkers, and they said, oh, don't worry, you're just coming with us. And I said, okay. So they like brought me along to their families' houses and seeing these altars and talking with their families, and I just kept getting, and then we went to this big celebration and then to someone else's house, and people just kept like, took me in and were like, okay, there's this American girl here, and just kept feeding me food and giving me drinks and like making sure I was really taken care of and answering any questions that I had. And I was still like in shock, and my Spanish wasn't even that good yet. I was still trying to figure everything out, but it was just that, I think, was one of the coolest things, of feeling like I got really a door into this culture that I would not have seen had I just been there by myself traveling. And then another thing that's sort of a small one, but as I was there for more months, I would start seeing kids that we worked with in the markets, like just out and about in the city. And it just always made me so happy when a little kid would run up to me and like bring me over to their parents so I could meet their parents. And it was some kid that I worked with in some market and was seeing week after week, so I knew them well. And when they were like so excited to have me meet their older sister and meet their parents that I hadn't met before, and like would run up to me just like when I was out doing my grocery shopping in the city, that was something that really made me feel like, oh, like I have a place here and I have relationships with people here. And yeah, those were two of my favorite things.
Amazing. What great immersion. Yeah. Could you educate us about the role of Indigenous rights and what the situation is in the community in which you were working, and how can we be more informed as people here in the United States?
Yeah, I think it's something that I definitely was still learning about the whole time I was there, was about that the way that it's mostly Indigenous Mayan communities are really active and present especially in southern Mexico, but also in Guatemala and throughout more of the Latin America region. But I think that there's some really, there's a lot of different things I could say about this. I'm trying to boil it down to the important points. I think that one thing that's really interesting to learn and read about is the role of the Zapatista Revolution, which is specifically where I was in San Cristobal, is very sort of the seat of where the Zapatista Revolution was, which was this Indigenous rights revolution that happened in '94, but it's still a really, really present role. A really present role in Mexican society today, is still really active and progressive. Has been really, really active in the women's rights movement in Mexico as well. So they've had a really important role in that movement that is very, very present today. But so I think reading about the Zapatista Revolution and about Indigenous Mayan groups is something that I had never done before I decided I was going to Mexico, and something that I don't really ever remember learning about in my history classes. This was not a thing we talked about. So I think sort of informing yourself about those. because it's not, a lot of people think, oh, well, the Mayan civilization was, you know, centuries ago and that's over and now it's just Mexican, and that's very much not the case. And there's also a lot of racism and discrimination against Indigenous people and Indigenous communities in Mexico. So I think that's something that's important to be talking about and acknowledging, and not just sort of washing over that problem.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it has been great talking with you, and our church is delighted to continue our support of this program, and it's so good to hear some firsthand stories of the ways in which that ministry continues to thrive. So we'll be praying for you, and we hope that all of the interns like you around the world are doing as great of a job really embracing this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for your support of the Global Mission Intern Program.
Of course. Thank you, Abby.
Take care.